Alright, this is the Niu NQI GT. NQI GT, this is the highest end version before the newest one that came out with the new motor that's even more powerful. I've had this bike about a year, just under a year, and when I first got this bike I was daily driving it to work every day. Now I have a short commute that I now do on my CEO4 over here. It's about 7 or 8 kilometers one way, so about 15 kilometers a day. So I'm going to review this bike today and talk about it, and mention the good things that I really like about it, but also some of the bad things that I've discovered over time. It comes with two keys here. You have the key that goes into the ignition over here. It locks, you push in to lock the bike so that people can't just kind of wheel it away. Now it's unlocked, so you can move it. And this is how you power it on. It's a little bit bright out here. You can still see though. It's a very nice screen, very bright. And it's showing currently 19%, as you can see. Now I actually charged this bike up a few weeks ago. And it's been sitting here for the past like 2-3 weeks and nobody has touched it. And it went from 100% down to 19% without anybody ever riding it. So that's definitely one of the problems that I have with this bike, is that even when you're not riding it, it just, even if it just sits there, it'll still drain the battery over time. This is kind of a problem, but I kind of understand it because it has an app that connects to the ECU in real time through a network. The cloud service connected, so you can actually see the bike's condition in real time, and you can access it from anywhere, from the internet. I think it has a 3G SIM card installed with the ECU, so that's how it connects to the network. So that is actually one of the good points about this bike, is that it has very good connectivity and has a very good app, and I will commend Niu for their app. It displays all the information you need, and it's a very clear and very easy to use app. So that's definitely one of the good points. The bad points, the trade-off, is that it does drain your battery, even from 100% all the way down to like nothing if you just leave it sitting. So you definitely need to, charge the bike regularly, even if you're not using it. All right, so having said that, so now it is off, and you push left to raise it, to raise the seat. This is the other key. It's a fob. What the fob does is it locks the bike, and I think it also serves as maybe an alarm system. It does have a good security system. It will kind of stop people from stealing it by kind of locking itself up. Anyway, today what I'm doing is charging it because it's all the way down to 19%. As you can see, the charging unit is external. It's 100 volts where I live in Japan, so it is plugged in here outside to this plug that I had installed. And it takes about 4 hours to charge from 20% that it's at now back up to 100%. Then I'll probably leave it for a few weeks and see what happens. There are two ways to charge the bike. One is to plug it directly in from the wall socket. Here's one battery. The other battery is under the floor here. What I can do is take the key out, and you put the key in here, turn this, and that unlocks the front panel, or the floor panel, and here we have the second battery. This isn't actually my battery. I had to get a replacement because one of the issues I had with this bike is that the battery kept just shutting down as I was riding it, and that's something I'll talk about more later. I put some tape on here because, as you can see, it does get cut. The cable does get cut by the plastic here, which is not ideal. So I think in the future, Niu should kind of make sure that the plastic is smooth and it's not cutting into the cable, because this is the high voltage cable that, you know, feeds power from the battery into the motor, into the bike. So we really don't want to see this cable get damaged, because once this cable gets damaged, that you probably have to replace the whole thing. So yeah, that's definitely something that Niu needs to watch out for. All right, you can see the state of the battery by clicking on this button here, and as you can see, it's almost dead. It's flashing. Yeah, here's another high voltage cable. This one seems to be okay, but I would still, you know, look at this gap here and make sure that it's not sharp and it's not cutting into the cables. All right, now to plug it in, all you have to do is bring this cable over, lift this up, pull it down a little bit. There we go. And plug it in. That's it. It's kind of a weird shape. It's not like a universal shape, so you have to make sure you're coming in from the right angle. So you plug it in. There's a little gap here for the cable, so you can still kind of close the seat with the, you know, with the cable in that way. It's kind of a security thing. People can't just unplug it. Yeah. So things that I like about the bike would be the design. I like the color. I like the design. It's a traditional kind of scooter design. It's a 125cc equivalent. It has, I think, like 4 or 5 horsepower, but it has a lot of torque because it's an electric motor. It's a Bosch electric motor. So it is pretty torquey and powerful. Here's another high voltage cable that goes to the electric motor. And yeah, in terms of torque and power, the bike is fine. I weigh about 85 kilos. And yeah, I never had any problem with the power. That was always fine. But having said that, when you are riding the bike, you do need to put it into the sportiest mode. So let me just show you all the different modes that it has. Right, it's yeah, it's currently charging, and you can see it's going to take 4.5 hours to charge, and I have about 1,600 kilometers on the odometer, which is not that much. Yeah, unfortunately, because it's charging, you can't see the different modes right now. So yeah, that's all. I'll have to wait till it's finished charging. It's currently at 20%. So from 20% up to 100%, it's going to take 4.5 hours to charge. That's because it's charging at 100 volts, which is not a lot. If it was charging at 200 volts, it would probably charge a lot faster, probably in like 2 hours or something. That's what the CEO4 does. It takes about 2 hours at 15 amps, 200 volts. I love the color, the red and black. I actually used a bit of ceramic coating on the plastics here. It's starting to kind of come off a little bit, so I might have to give it another go over. Yeah, so this is all painted. It's got 2 stands. It's got the side stand and the back stand. It's got pegs here for another rider. That's how you open them, and that's how you close them. They're actually very sensitive, and even just like touching it can kind of open it, and sometimes it's hard to push back. So you just have to kind of play around with it until you get used to it. It's got a strong you know, rail here to grab onto. It's very good for when you're moving the bike. You know, so you grab here, and your other hand grabs here, and it makes it easier to move. It's not that heavy. It's actually very lightweight, even though it has 2 heavy batteries. The batteries are removable. You can charge them indoors, but unless you buy the adapter that lets you plug both batteries in at the same time to the charger, you end up having to charge them separately, which is annoying. And you have to kind of like charge one and kind of keep an eye on it. And once that's done, then you have to take off the plug and plug in the second one and wait for that to finish, which is super annoying. But I suppose one thing you could do is charge it at work. So you could like bring the charger with you, leave the charger at work. When you get to work, you take out one battery, you take it upstairs, plug it in. At lunchtime, it should be done by lunch. You take it down, bring the other one up, charge that one, and by the time you go home, both batteries are fully charged. That's one way you could do it. But I just prefer to charge at home because I plug it in and I let it charge over 4 hours. You know, what I was doing when I was riding this bike every day was coming home at night, plugging it in, and then unplugging it before bedtime. And that was it. Right, I love the LEDs. It's all LEDs, brake lights, turn signals. You can kind of see the LEDs in here. Yeah, I hope it's clear. Yeah. Yeah, it's got decent brakes. The brakes are regenerative. It's not automatic braking like a lot of electric vehicles. So with this bike, when you are riding, you have to pull on the brakes, and that creates the regenerative braking. Otherwise, it'll just roll like any other bike. It's not like the BMW that, you know, just the regenerative braking kicks in as you are riding, and as you let go of the throttle, it starts, you know, charging the regen. With this one, you have to hold in the brakes for the regen to kick in. It's neither good nor bad. It's just what it is. It's fine. It works just fine. But what that does mean is that you will need to have the brakes serviced. You will need new brake pads after a few years of riding, depending on how much you ride, of course. For me, it wasn't a lot. Like I said, I rode this bike for 8 months daily, and I only put like less than 2,000 kilometers on it, which is probably about like let's say 800 or 900 kilometers on it. 800 miles. Yeah, so not that much, not that many miles on it. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, turn signals here are a little bit loosey-goosey. I don't know. It's got the wiring here and LEDs, but it's a little bit flimsy. It's kind of attached here with 2 bolts. It's a little bit loosey-goosey. I don't know if this is how long this is going to last, but it's fine. It works. Headlights are pretty good. They're bright. And the worst thing about the bike is the suspension. It's just not like good enough for someone my size. And it's a very, very harsh ride. I've mentioned this before in another video, but riding this bike every day, even on the mildest bumps, it was like really harsh. And I had to use my air hawk on here. I'd put the air hawk here and tie it in underneath. And with the air hawk, it was kind of passable, but without the air hawk, no way. There's no way I could daily drive this bike, not at speed. Yeah. So it has like 3 or 4 modes. It has eco, then it has like street mode, and then it has sports mode. And I think sports mode is like the only way I could daily drive this bike for me. In sports mode, it is actually very quick, and it was fun to ride. I still want to use this bike for errands and, you know, maybe around town a little bit. Like, or let's say the BMW is in getting serviced and I need a bike to go to work. I'll use this for sure. There's no reason why I can't. But as it is now, compared to the BMW, this bike just isn't in that league. It's nowhere near that in that league, just overall. But that's understandable because it's nowhere near as expensive. This bike costs 1.6 million yen, which is, let's just say for the sake of argument, it's about $15,000 or $16,000. This one cost like a third of that. I think it was like 500,000 yen, or no, it was actually a lot less than that. It was like 300,000 yen. So $3,000. Yeah, so 15 grand versus 3,000. If you can't afford something like this, I understand. It's expensive. It's still early days for electric bikes, so you might want to start with something like this. It's a perfectly good little bike. It's affordable. If you're smaller and you don't weigh that much, then this is probably a fun little bike to have to daily ride. You don't have to care about it because it's not that expensive. And you can just kind of like throw it around and daily ride it, and it's fine. You know, if you want to have two bikes and you want to keep the nicer bike for the weekends and just daily ride this one, you can do that. It's probably very cheap to charge, and yeah, it's like it's a sunny day today. I'm generating power. I have solar panels on the roof, and I'm generating power now, so it's free to charge for me right now. I charged the car as well. As you can see, there's a plug hanging out the front there. Yeah, the Japanese edition of this car needs to be plugged in from the front instead of at the back. So yeah, I'm generating power right now. You can see the solar panels up there, and basically what I'm doing now isn't costing me anything. I'm charging the car and the bike for free, so it's very cheap to run. That's definitely one of the good points. The seat itself is pretty soft. Yeah, I think I just locked it. No, it's not. So it is soft, and the seat isn't the issue. It's the suspension that's the issue. The suspension just isn't strong enough for someone my weight. So if I could, I don't know if I can adjust this or not, but I would recommend better suspension in the future, especially if you're going to sell this bike to Westerners. It is a Chinese company, Chinese-made bike. I don't have a problem with that. The issue is that it's not really you know, set up for bigger people. It's set up for smaller people. So I think in the future, if Niu really wants to sell this to Westerners that are a bit bigger, a bit heavier, you do need to think about things like the suspension. You need to improve that. Yeah, other than that, it's pretty good. Now, the problems that I ran into with this bike. One was the batteries. Riding this bike every day, in sports mode every day. Now, if the bike is rated to use a sports mode, and the batteries are rated for this, you know, the electric motor can definitely handle sports mode. That's not the issue. The issue is that the batteries can't seem to handle it, because every day I was riding this bike, and at random times, one battery would just cut out completely. And you would see the dip, and you would kind of have, yeah, so here you can see that in the display, you can see two batteries, right? Two batteries being charged up. So you'd be riding along, and then suddenly one battery would just disappear off the screen. And you would drop from sports mode into, like, you know, normal mode. And because you only have one battery. And when you only have one battery, you can't use sports mode. So I would suddenly lose half of my range, half of my power, all because the battery, I think, was overheating. And that's why I had to replace one of the batteries, because I thought maybe the problem was with the battery. So I asked them to send me a new one so I could see if that was the issue. Like, why did this keep happening? I mean, you can't say, you know, you can't advertise the bike as being able to do something like ride in sports mode at this speed at 80 kilometers per hour. But then when you actually do it, the battery overheats and shuts down. So what does that mean? Does that mean that it can do that or that it can't do that? So you can't tell me that the bike can do this, but then when you actually do this, it suddenly stops running properly and it stops working. So that's the issue that I have with this bike, is that if I am riding the bike at 80 and I am riding it in sports mode, and then the battery suddenly decides to shut down, you know, am I getting what I paid for? Not really. I did contact Niu about this, and they told me that I have to basically take the bike into a dealer and have the bike checked, and have the system checked, because it could be a software problem, but I don't think so, because it happened randomly, and it happened to both batteries at one point, and it happened very randomly in different weather conditions, hot and cold. And and after leaving the battery for a few minutes, it would probably cool down, and then it would re-engage and it would come up again on the screen, and you'd be able to start writing again. But like I said, I think the battery was just overheating from constant use at speed. So that tells me that the batteries are not good enough for what the bike can do. The bike is rated to do something, the motor is rated to do something, but the batteries can't keep up with the motor. So yes, it could be a software problem, but more likely is that the batteries are cheap and they can't keep up with the demand from the motor. So that's something that Niu needs to look at. I'm hoping that in newer models they fix this, but I don't know because I don't have one, so I can't say. But the problem I have with this is that it doesn't work for me. I'm going to ride it in sport mode. I'm going to ride it at its top speed because I need to get to work. And if it can't handle that, then I can't use it. That's the bottom line. Could be a software problem. I don't really know. The problem with having a bike like this in Japan is that there's nowhere you can take it for servicing. There's only one company in Japan selling Niu and Super Soko and these other Chinese companies' bikes. It's a company called Zeem. It's in Kyushu, and it's far away from where I live, and having the bike serviced is a huge inconvenience. So I'm left with a bike that I can't use. So basically what I've done is I've told my wife, listen, get rid of this thing because it's a gas guzzler. We don't need it anymore. Get your 125cc license because it's a separate license. 50cc you can ride with a car license, but 125 you need a bike license for this. So I told her, get your 125 and then you can ride this to work when you go to work. She works from home most of the time, but when she needs to go somewhere like to the gym or to work, she can ride this. And that's fine because she doesn't ride like I do. She'll ride slower. And I don't think the battery will have a problem if you're riding it in dynamic mode, like in slow mode or in normal mode. But if you ride it in sports mode and you maintain, 75 kph kilometers per hour for an extended period of time, that's when the battery has a problem and it overheats and it crashes. The battery basically crashes and it becomes unusable for a few minutes, and then I have to wait for it to cool down, and it cuts into your commute. And it's dangerous too because the bike suddenly loses power. You can be like riding in traffic and then all of a sudden the battery just cuts out randomly. And now I'm like stuck in traffic and I can't move because the battery just died. And what do I do? Do I like hope nobody hits me or what? What do I do, right? So that's dangerous. So it's a danger, which is why I don't want to ride it anymore. Like I said, I will ride it, but not at speed. All right, so the bike is very silent. You don't hear any noise, right? So there's no engine, motor noise. You don't hear anything like that. There's no regen noise. It's just the sound of the brakes. Actually, another little problem with this is I hear the brake pads touching against the brakes, and I think it's on the back. That's something I should have them adjust. Yeah, the brakes. Yeah, there's the brakes there, brake calipers. The brakes are pretty good. They work and they do create regen for the bike, which is good. And the tires are good too. They're pretty sticky tires. Yeah, no major complaints other than the problems with the battery, just kind of like not working. Just suddenly cutting off and not working due to overheating. If they can fix the problem with the batteries overheating, then I think it's a pretty good bike for what it costs, and it's a good alternative to buying something like this, for sure. I'd rather have this than this thing here. So it's electric, it's cheap to charge, and it'll take you to work every day. So it's a solid little bike with a few glitches that I think need to be addressed. Yeah, that's it. Hey, before I finish the video, I just wanted to give you an update. I just found out today that the company Zeem that sells bikes like the NQI GT in Japan just announced the 2023 model bike, and they announced something that I thought was very interesting. You can see here that in 2020, the model before the one that I bought, had Panasonic batteries. Then when I bought my bike last year in 2021, they had changed the batteries to Chinese made batteries, no brand batteries. And then this year for 2023, as you can see over here, they have Panasonic batteries again. I wonder why. I think it's probably because they were having problems with the Chinese made batteries, like the problems that I have with the bike. When riding at high speed for an extended period of time, the battery just overheats and it shuts down. And I think this must be a common problem. And I really think, they need to address it. Niu need to address this problem. And if people are having these issues, they should replace the batteries. It's not that simple though, because the new batteries are bigger. I'll just fast forward here a little bit. And you can see here that the 2021 model, 22 model has a 1,560 watt hour battery. Well, two of them, right? One in the floor, one in the seat. The 2023 model using the new Panasonic battery now has a 2,100 watt hour battery times two, same thing. Other than the battery, according to these guys at Zeem, nothing else has changed. The bike is still exactly the same. This is still the older motor that they're using. They're not using the newer NQI GT that Niu makes, that has the newer motor that has more power, which is a shame. So I guess that means we can't get that newer model in Japan. So basically they're still selling the old model from last year, but with a new battery, with a Panasonic battery. The weight is still the same. It's 109 kilos for, I guess, both batteries. But the range has improved. My bike has about 85 kilometers of range. The new one has 92 kilometers of range. Makes sense because the batteries are bigger. Well, not bigger, but they have more capacity. So yeah, I think this is something worth addressing, and I'm gonna have to get in touch with Niu and Zeem to ask them about this, because I keep having problems with the bike. I don't want to ride the bike because, in the middle of traffic, one of the batteries will suddenly shut down, and that kind of hampers the bike's performance, and I have to pull over to the side of the road and wait for the battery to cool down before I can keep going. And I just don't think that's an acceptable thing. And if the reason is the batteries, then this is the solution. You have to get yourself the new Panasonic battery. So if you do want to buy this bike, again, I'm not saying I wouldn't buy this bike. I do like the bike. I want to keep riding it. But with the current battery I'm using, the Chinese made battery, I just don't think it works. And I think it doesn't work because the battery just isn't up to the task of keeping up with the demand from the motor and demand from the rider. I mean, if you're going to sell a bike that can do a certain speed, but then when you actually do that speed, the battery shuts down, then it's not doing what it's supposed to do. Like I said, the bike, this is actually the CPX, the Super Soco. But both bikes are supposed to be able to do 75 kilometers per hour. My bike is supposed to be able to do it too. That's what the specs call for, 75 kph. And if I'm doing 75 kph and the battery shuts down, then it's clearly not able to do that. So yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, it's worth talking about, and I really think either Zeem or Niu need to honor need to look at this problem, and they need to at least offer us a solution. Maybe trade in the old Chinese made batteries for the new Panasonic batteries, give us a discount. But allow us to replace them, because I just don't think the cheaper battery works properly with this bike. I don't think it's up to the task of meeting the demand of the motor. Here you can see 2021-22. This is my bike right here, Chinese battery. 2023
two models. No, they don't have this. That's weird because they were just showing that bike. They were showing the black and white one. You can see them riding it here. They're riding the black and white one. I guess all they did was just pull out the batteries and put in the new Panasonic batteries. I don't know. I haven't watched the full video. But yeah, anyway, so Zeem, I'll talk about Zeem in a future video. A very good company. It's a small company that sells, all the electric bikes you can get out of China, Super Soco, Niu, and more. So I'll talk about those guys. If you are in Japan and you want to get yourself an electric bike, like a scooter, like the Niu or a Super Soco bike, which are much more affordable than something like the BMW or, the more expensive bikes like Energica and Zero. Those bikes are very expensive and out of reach for most people. But these bikes here are a good alternative if you want to go green and you want to get an electric bike. And you want to be able to charge at home and save money, because you do save money with these bikes. These bikes are very efficient, and like I said, you can charge these at your office. If you commute to work on a bike and you can charge your batteries in your office, it's not going to cost you a penny to ride these bikes. So I think it's definitely a great solution. You're going to be green. You're going to save money, and you can kind of have fun with these little bikes. They're good little bikes and they do work well. But I'm just having a problem, and I think I'm not the only one with the batteries. I think that's the issue. I really don't think it's a software problem. So if you are going to buy one, I would get the new one, the 2023 with the Panasonic battery. They might cost more. I'm pretty sure they are more expensive. Yeah, NQI GT 22 model. Oh, it's 50. It's 500,000 yen, which is about $5,000, ignoring the exchange rate. I only paid like 300,000 yen for mine. It was on sale. Yeah. Let's see what else is there here. Yeah, they are doing some kind of sale on these bikes. On the CPX is actually pretty expensive, but it's about the same. All right, here we go. The new, no, this is the 2021 model. This is the outgoing model, the one that I have, and I think the newer model is a bit more expensive. Come on, where is it? Is that it there? Let me just scroll back a little bit. Yeah, there it is. This is the 2023 model. It is more expensive. It's actually twice the price of what I paid for mine. So, but you're getting the exact same bike, but with better batteries. It is still a lot cheaper than buying something like the BMW. But I mean, if you just put a 1 here and you pay 1,600,000 yen, you can get the BMW. So if you have the credit and you want to get that bike, I would just get that bike. Don't mess around. If you can afford it, get a good bike like the BMW. But if you can't justify the price, and this is much more affordable, and you get a cover, which I got with mine too, and you get, which is useful. So yeah, you could have this bike for 600,000 yen. Eventually, they'll probably put this on sale too. I'm still surprised that they're charging this much for what is basically the exact same bike as last year. It's not like this has the new motor or anything. It doesn't. The new, more powerful motor that Niu actually made for these bikes. So yeah, it's okay. Well, that's it. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna have to contact Niu and Zeem again and see what they say about the battery issue. Thanks.